It started as just another quiet evening in the Johnson household, but within hours, tragedy struck in a way no one could have imagined. 17-year-old Caleb had finally built up the courage to share his truth with the person he trusted most, his father, Pastor Robert Johnson. For years, Robert preached love and righteousness to his congregation, guiding them on faith and family values. But behind closed doors, his own beliefs were about to be tested in the most heartbreaking way. When Caleb revealed he was gay and in a relationship, the room fell silent. What followed next would shake the community to its core. Neighbors would recall hearing raised voices, a heated argument turning into something far worse. By the time authorities arrived, it was too late. Now, a town is left reeling, a family is shattered, and one question lingers: how did love turn into something so unrecognizable? Caleb had always known his father's beliefs ran deep. Growing up in a strict religious home, he heard countless sermons about sin, redemption, and the path to righteousness. But he also believed in the love of family, that no matter what, his father would accept him. That night, as he sat across from Pastor Robert, heart pounding, he thought maybe, just maybe, things would be different. But the moment the words left his mouth, he saw his father's face change. The warmth in his eyes disappeared, replaced by something cold and unrecognizable. The silence stretched between them, heavy and suffocating. Then came the questions, the accusations. How could he do this? Had the devil deceived him? Caleb tried to explain, to make his father understand, but every word only seemed to make things worse. The man he had once admired was slipping away, and in his place stood someone he no longer recognized. Caleb's mother, Lisa, stood in the doorway, her face pale as she watched the exchange unfold. She had always been the quiet force in the family, the one who balanced Robert's stern ways with gentle understanding. But now, fear kept her frozen in place. She had seen this side of her husband before, the unwavering belief that his way was the only way. Caleb's younger sister, Emma, listened from the top of the stairs, gripping the railing as tension filled the house. She didn't understand why love was something to be ashamed of. To her, Caleb was just Caleb, her big brother, the one who helped with homework and made her laugh when their father was too strict. But tonight, it felt like her family was falling apart. Meanwhile, Robert's mind raced. This wasn't just about Caleb. It was about everything he had built, his church, his reputation. And in that moment, he believed he had to do something to set things right. Caleb's heart pounded as his father's voice grew louder, each word cutting deeper than the last. He had prepared himself for disappointment, maybe even anger, but not this. The man standing before him was no longer just his father. He was a pastor desperate to defend his beliefs, no matter the cost. Lisa finally found her voice, stepping between them. "Robert, please," she pleaded, her hands shaking. "He's our son." But Robert didn't seem to hear her. His mind was clouded with fear of losing control, fear of what the church would say, fear that everything he stood for was crumbling before him. Emma rushed down the stairs, tears streaming down her face, but no one noticed. The room felt smaller, the air heavier. Caleb knew he had to leave, to escape the weight of his father's disappointment. But before he could move, Robert took a step forward, his eyes locked onto his son with an intensity that sent a chill down Caleb's spine. Caleb took a step back, his breath unsteady. He had never seen his father like this, his face tight, with something between rage and desperation. But just as Robert moved closer, the front door burst open. A voice, firm and unwavering, cut through the tension. "Caleb, are you okay?" Standing in the doorway was Jordan, his boyfriend. He had been waiting outside in his car, worried after Caleb stopped responding to his messages. When the yelling started, he couldn't sit back any longer. Robert's eyes darkened. "You," he spat, his voice filled with something almost unrecognizable. Lisa gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. Emma clutched the staircase railing, her small body trembling. Caleb's chest tightened. He knew this would only make things worse, but he also knew he wasn't alone. Jordan's presence was a reminder he didn't have to face this by himself. But what Robert did next would change everything. The room felt like it was on the verge of collapse. Caleb could hear his own heartbeat pounding in his ears as his father's fists clenched at his sides. Jordan didn't move, standing firm in the doorway, his presence both a comfort and a danger. Robert's chest rose and fell in rapid breaths, his entire world spinning out of control. "You need to leave," he growled, his voice low but full of warning. But Jordan didn't move. He reached out for Caleb's hand, his touch steady, a silent promise that he wasn't going anywhere. Then, something unexpected happened. Lisa, the woman who had always stood in the background, stepped forward. "If he leaves, Caleb and I leave too," she said, her voice shaking but resolute. For the first time, Robert's expression faltered. He looked at his wife, then at Emma, who had moved to stand beside her mother. The reality of the moment settled in. This wasn't just about Caleb. This was about his family slipping through his fingers. Robert's breath hitched, his anger giving way to something else. But before he could speak, the flashing lights of a police car filled the windows. Someone had called for help. And just like that, the night took an entirely different turn. The flashing red and blue lights cast long shadows across the living room as officers stepped inside. The tension that had been suffocating the house finally broke, replaced by a heavy silence. Caleb felt his mother's hand tighten around his, and for the first time that night, he let out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. Robert stood frozen, his anger now replaced with something else: regret, fear, maybe even shame. The man who had spent his life preaching love and redemption was now faced with a harsh truth: he had let his own son slip away. As the officers spoke to each of them, it became clear this wasn't just about one night. It was about years of unspoken pain, about a family at a crossroads. As Caleb stepped outside with Jordan, Lisa, and Emma by his side, he realized something. No matter what happened next, he wasn't alone, and that was enough.